Your mother is dying, and God is watching her suffer. You've prayed every single day for months, begging, pleading, bargaining with him. The entire church is praying, prayer chains across 3 states, and she's still dying, screaming in pain, asking why God abandoned her after a lifetime of service. Where is he? Where's the God she spent 70 years worshiping? Where's the answer to 10,000 prayers? He's not coming. He was never there. And you know this. You've known it for a long time. That's why you're here, not to learn something new, but to hear someone say what you've been thinking and were too afraid to admit. You're not looking for answers. You're looking for permission to stop pretending. So here it is. You're praying to nothing. You're worshiping nothing. You've wasted your entire life on nothing. And the God you're terrified of abandoning, he abandoned you a long time ago. Or more accurately, he was never there to abandon you in the first place. You pray to a God who never answers. You follow rules written by men who've been dead for thousands of years. You believe in an afterlife you've never seen, promised by people who've never been there and never came back. And deep down, in that part of your mind you try not to visit at 3 in the morning, you know it's not real. You know no one's listening. You know you're talking to yourself. But you keep praying anyway, keep believing anyway, keep pretending anyway because the alternative is too terrifying to face. That you're alone, that you're going to die, that when it's over, you're just gone. Religion isn't truth, it's the lie you tell yourself so you can sleep at night. It's the distraction you cling to so you don't have to look directly at the horror of existence. And the worst part? You know this, you've always known this, but you're too afraid to admit it, even to yourself. So let me ask you something. When was the last time God answered one of your prayers? Not coincidence that you attributed to God, not something that would have happened anyway, but an actual, undeniable answer. God reaching into reality and changing something specifically for you. You prayed for your mother to survive cancer. She died anyway, screaming in pain in a hospital bed, and you stood there helpless, watching God do nothing. But then your religious family told you she's in a better place now, and you nodded. You accepted it because admitting that she suffered meaninglessly and then just stopped existing was too brutal. You prayed for that job you desperately needed, you didn't get it, and you told yourself God has a better plan, even though you couldn't pay rent that month. You prayed for your depression to lift, for your anxiety to ease, and it didn't, but you kept praying anyway, kept waiting for an answer that never came. Or maybe you prayed for something trivial and it happened, you found a parking spot, you passed a test, and you called it a miracle, completely ignoring the thousands of prayers that went unanswered, the confirmation bias that makes you remember the hits and forget the misses. You've been having a one-sided conversation with the universe for so long that you've convinced yourself someone's on the other end, but they're not. It's just you. It's always been just you, talking to yourself, comforting yourself, lying to yourself. And I know what you're thinking right now. I can predict it because I've heard it 1,000 times. You just don't understand faith. You can't prove God doesn't exist. This is too complex for your simple mind. But that's not an argument, it's a defense mechanism. It's what you say when you can't defend your beliefs with logic, when you can't provide evidence, when all you have left is insisting that not having proof is somehow proof. Faith isn't a virtue, it's surrender. It's giving up on finding truth and accepting whatever story makes you feel better. Here's what religion really is, stripped of all the poetry, all the ritual, all the beautiful lies. It's a survival mechanism, a psychological defense system that evolved because humans couldn't handle the weight of consciousness. Your ancestors looked at death and couldn't accept it, looked at suffering and demanded an explanation, looked at the vast, indifferent universe and desperately needed to believe someone was in control. So they invented gods, beings that looked like them, talked like them, cared about them. They created elaborate stories about afterlives, about cosmic justice, about divine plans. And these stories weren't true, but they were useful. They helped people cope, helped them function, helped them not go insane from existential terror. Religion is the original painkiller, the first drug humanity ever invented, and you're still addicted to it thousands of years later. But let's say I'm wrong. Let's say God is real. He's listening, he's watching, he has a plan. That makes what you believe even more terrifying. Think about what you actually believe. There's an invisible being who created the entire universe, who knows everything, who can do anything, who loves you personally, but he needs money, he needs you to worship him, he needs you to follow very specific rules about what you eat, who you sleep with, what you wear. Your church just built $1 million sanctuary with marble floors and stained glass windows while people in your city sleep on the streets, and they told you this glorifies God. Your priest says that God, who spoke the universe into existence, is deeply offended by two men loving each other, by you having sex before marriage, by you eating meat on Friday during Lent. Does this sound like the priorities of an infinite cosmic intelligence, or does it sound exactly like the petty concerns of the ancient humans who invented these rules? He's all-powerful, but somehow can't stop a father from raping his own daughter. That happened last week 3 blocks from your house. Where was God? He's all-knowing, but gets angry when you masturbate, when you doubt, when you question, things he knew you would do before he even created you. He loves you unconditionally, but will torture you forever if you don't love him back, if you worship the wrong version of him, if you were born in the wrong country and believed the wrong book. Let me ask you another question, and I want you to really sit with this one. Why is your religion the right one? How do you know? Did you examine all the world's religions, study their claims, weigh their evidence, and conclude through careful analysis that yours is true? Or did your parents hand it to you when you were too young to question it, the same way their parents handed it to them, the same way their grandparents handed it to them, stretching back generations of people who never questioned it either, just passed it down like an heirloom, like a family recipe, like inherited trauma? You were born in a specific place to specific parents in a specific culture, and they taught you a specific religion. If you'd been born in India, you'd be Hindu, and you'd be just as convinced that Hinduism is the truth as you are now about your religion. If you'd been born in Saudi Arabia, you'd be Muslim, praying 5 times a day, certain that Islam is the only path. If you'd been born in ancient Greece, you'd believe in Zeus, and you'd think people who don't are fools destined for Hades. If you'd been born among the Aztecs, you'd believe that cutting out human hearts on temple steps was necessary to keep the sun rising. That Christian sitting in church right now, absolutely convinced that Jesus Christ is the only path to salvation, that accepting him as Lord and Savior is the only way to avoid eternal damnation. If he'd been born in Tehran to a Muslim family, he'd be just as convinced, with the exact same certainty, the exact same unshakable faith, that Muhammad is the final prophet and the Quran is the literal word of God. He'd pity Christians for being misguided, for worshiping a man as God, for not recognizing the truth that's so obvious to him. That Muslim woman wearing hijab, certain in her soul that Islam is the absolute truth, that submission to Allah is the meaning of existence. If she'd been born in Alabama to a Baptist family, she'd be at church every Sunday singing about Jesus' love, raising her hands in worship, speaking in tongues, absolutely certain that she'd been saved by grace and that Muslims are lost because they reject Christ. She'd look at women in hijabs and think, how sad, how oppressed, how deceived they are by a false prophet. That Hindu man performing puja, devoted to Shiva, believing in karma and reincarnation with every fiber of his being, if he'd been born in Rome to a Catholic family, he'd be at Mass, praying to Mary, believing in transubstantiation, confessing his sins to a priest, certain that the Pope speaks with divine authority, and that Hindus are pagans worshiping false idols. You see the pattern? Every single one of them thinks they're right. Every single one of them has faith. Every single one of them believes their holy book is true, their God is real, their religion is the path to salvation. And every single one of them believes these things for the exact same reason you do, not because they examined the evidence and reached a logical conclusion, but because they were born into it, because it was given to them before they could think, because questioning it meant betraying their family, their community, their entire identity. Your beliefs aren't the result of careful examination and rational analysis. They're the result of geographical accident, of cultural programming, of being indoctrinated before you were old enough to think critically. You believe what you believe because of where and when you were born, because of who you were raised, because religion got to you before reason could. And now you defend those beliefs as absolute truth, as universal reality, as the only path to salvation. but you're doing exactly what everyone in every other religion does, defending the accident of your birth as if it were cosmic destiny. And here's what's really disturbing. You know this. Somewhere deep down, you know that if the circumstances of your birth had been different, you'd believe something completely different with the exact same conviction. But you can't acknowledge this because acknowledging it means acknowledging that your faith isn't about truth. It's about where you happen to be born, about what story your parents needed to believe to cope with existence, about inheriting their coping mechanism, whether it makes sense or not. You were 5 years old when they first told you about hell, about eternal fire, about a place where bad people burn forever. You were 5, still believing in Santa Claus, still afraid of the dark, and they described torture that never ends, suffering without mercy, pain beyond imagination. And they said this could happen to you, that God would send you there if you didn't believe, if you didn't obey. That's not teaching, that's psychological terrorism aimed at children. That's trauma installed directly into a developing brain, and it worked. 30 years later, you still feel guilty for thoughts you can't control, still afraid of a hell you intellectually know probably doesn't exist. And you know what the worst part is? You can't remember a time before you were afraid. They got you before you could defend yourself, before you could think, before you could question. They installed the fear so young that it feels like it's always been part of you, like it's natural, like it's truth, instead of what it actually is, child abuse dressed up as salvation. Christianity says Jesus is the only way to salvation. Islam says Muhammad is the final prophet. Hinduism has millions of gods. Buddhism doesn't even have a creator god. They contradict each other on fundamental issues, which means at most one is right, but more likely, none of them are right, because they're all human attempts to answer questions that have no answers, to create certainty where none exists, to impose meaning on a universe that offers none. Here's what really happens when you die. Your brain stops, your consciousness ends, and you cease to exist. Not heaven, not hell, not reincarnation, just nothing. The same nothing you experienced before you were born. Remember your grandfather's funeral? Open casket, everyone filing past, saying he looks peaceful, saying he's in heaven now. But you looked at his face, really looked, and you saw that he wasn't there anymore. Whatever made him him was gone. You were staring at meat, at a biological machine that stopped functioning, and everyone around you was pretending he just moved to a different location. Your aunt whispered, "He's with Grandma now," and you nodded, but you saw the truth. He's nowhere, he's nothing, he's just stopped. That's what happens when you die. Not angels, not light at the end of the tunnel, not your deceased relatives welcoming you home, just the end. Final and absolute and permanent. And this terrifies you, the idea that you're temporary, that everything you are will just stop. So religion offers you an escape. Your soul continues, you go to heaven, you're reunited with loved ones, you exist forever in eternal bliss. Your pastor describes it in detail: streets of gold, gates of pearl, no more pain, eternal joy in God's presence. It's a beautiful story, and you want it to be true so desperately that you convince yourself it is true. But wanting something doesn't make it real, and all the faith in the world won't change the fact that when your brain dies, you die with it. Religion tells you that without God, life has no meaning. But that's backwards. Life has the meaning you give it, the meaning you create through your choices, your relationships, your actions. Religion tells you that without God, there's no basis for morality. But that's insane. You don't need an ancient book to tell you that hurting people is wrong. You have empathy, you have reason, you have the ability to think about consequences. That's where morality comes from, not from divine commandment. And honestly, if the only reason you're not murdering people is because God told you not to, then you're not a moral person, you're an obedient person, and there's a difference. And let's talk about what your holy books actually say, the parts you conveniently ignore. The Bible endorses slavery, not metaphorical slavery, actual slavery, with rules about how hard you can beat your slaves as long as they don't die within a day or two. Exodus 21:20-21, it's right there. The Bible commands genocide. 1 Samuel 15:3, God orders the complete destruction of the Amalekites. Kill the men, kill the women, kill the children, kill the animals, leave nothing alive. The The Bible treats women as property. Deuteronomy 22:28-29. If a man rapes an unmarried woman, his punishment is to pay her father 50 shekels and marry her because she's now damaged goods. The Bible demands death for working on the Sabbath, for being gay, for disobeying your parents. And Christianity? Jesus himself said he didn't come to abolish the Old Testament law, but to fulfill it. Matthew 5:17-18, which means every barbaric rule still stands. The New Testament tells women to be silent in churches, to submit to their husbands in everything. Ephesians 5:22-24, 1 Timothy 2:11-12. It says slaves should obey their masters, even the cruel ones. 1 Peter 2:18. It promises that non-believers will be thrown into a lake of fire where they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Revelation 20:10. That a rich man has less chance of entering heaven than a camel going through the eye of a needle. Matthew 19:24. Yet your church just bought a private jet for the pastor. You know these verses exist, and you have two choices. Either you defend them, you explain them away, you claim they're taken out of context, or you admit that these passages are morally wrong, that slavery is evil, that genocide is horrific. And if you admit these passages are wrong, then you're admitting something crucial. Your morality doesn't come from this book, it comes from somewhere else, from your own sense of right and wrong that exists independent of religion. You've already rejected what your religion teaches about slavery, about genocide, about women as property, which means you don't actually need religion for morality, which means you're already doing the work of ethics on your own. And here's what you need to understand. I'm not trying to attack your religion. Your religion is already attacking you. It's been attacking you since you were 5 years old. I'm just pointing out the wounds. So, why do you keep believing? Because religion offers you something you desperately need: community, identity, purpose, and hope. Your church is where you met your closest friends, where your kids go to youth group, where you feel like you belong. Walking away means losing that community, means awkward conversations, means being the outsider, means disappointing your mother who's been praying for your soul since before you were born. It's easier to sit through sermons you don't believe, to mouth words to prayers you don't mean because the social cost of leaving is too high. It gives you an identity. You're not just another person struggling through existence, you're a Christian, a Muslim, a Hindu. Take that away and who are you? Just another consciousness trapped in meat, just another temporary arrangement of atoms. The identity religion gave you felt more substantial, felt like it answered the question of who you are. It gives you purpose, serving God, spreading the faith, following the rules, so you don't have to do the hard work of creating your own purpose. Without religion, you'd have to figure out your own purpose, create your own meaning, decide for yourself what makes life worth living, and that's terrifying. And the community? It's conditional. Stay in line, believe the right things, and you're accepted. But question the doctrine, express doubt, and watch how fast that love turns to judgment. Remember when your friend came out as gay? You watched your church community, people who talked about love, who sang about grace, turn on him instantly. They called it tough love, but what you witnessed was cruelty dressed up as righteousness. They told him he was living in sin, that God couldn't love him unless he changed who he was. And you sat there, saying nothing, because speaking up would mean you'd be next. He stopped coming to church, stopped returning calls, and 2 years later you heard he'd attempted suicide, and your pastor said it was because he'd turned away from God, not because God's followers had tormented him until he couldn't bear existing anymore. Or maybe it was you. Maybe you asked the wrong question in Bible study, questioned why a loving God would command genocide, and you felt the room temperature drop, felt the stares. Someone said, "We need to pray for you," which is Christian code for, "You're dangerous, you need to be fixed." You learned quickly, doubt is sin, questioning is pride, thinking for yourself is rebellion. The community's love was never unconditional, it was transactional, dependent on your obedience, your willingness to believe what you're told without asking why. Religious communities aren't built on unconditional love, they're built on shared delusion. And the moment you threaten that delusion, you become the enemy. And this is how religion keeps you trapped. It makes leaving so costly that staying becomes the only option, even when you've stopped believing, even when you know it's a lie. When you let go of religion, at first it's terrifying. You feel lost, alone, unmoored. The universe suddenly seems bigger, colder, and more indifferent. Death suddenly seems final. Suffering suddenly seems random, meaningless. And you realize that no one's coming to save you. No one has a plan for your life. You're on your own, maybe for the first time. And that terror, that's what religion was protecting you from. That's what you've been too afraid to face. But then, something else happens. You become free. Free to think without guilt, to question without sin, to live without performing for a cosmic audience that doesn't exist. Free to create your own meaning instead of waiting for God to give it to you. Free to make your own choices instead of following ancient rules. And yes, you're still gonna die. Yes, the universe is still indifferent. But now you're not wasting your life preparing for a fantasy. You're living in reality. And reality is the only place where anything actually matters. Because here's the brutal truth. This life is all you have. This moment is all that's real. And wasting it on prayers, rituals, and fantasies about the afterlife is the real tragedy. Every hour you spend in church is an hour you could have spent with people you love. Every dollar you give to religion is a dollar you could have used to help someone who actually needs it. Religion isn't saving you from hell, it's preventing you from fully living, from fully thinking, from fully being human. And your suffering? It doesn't mean anything. Not because God has a plan, not because it's a test, it's just suffering, random and cruel and pointless. That miscarriage you had 3 years ago, the church told you God needed another angel, that it was part of his plan, that you'd see your baby in heaven someday. But there was no angel, there was no plan, there was just cells that stopped dividing, a pregnancy that failed, biology doing what biology sometimes does. You didn't lose a baby because God needed it in heaven, you lost a pregnancy because pregnancies fail, randomly, meaninglessly, and no amount of prayer would have changed it. The child dying of cancer isn't part of God's plan, they're just dying, a child in pain, terrified, asking why this is happening while their parents pray desperately for a miracle that isn't coming. 6 years old, bald from chemotherapy, hooked up to machines that beep with every struggling heartbeat. And your God, the one who supposedly loves this child more than anyone, watches and does nothing. The parents pray, the church prays, thousands pray, prayer chains across the country, and the child dies anyway, confused and afraid and calling for mommy, not understanding why God won't help, why the prayers aren't working, why it hurts so much. 2 months later at the funeral, the priest says the child is in a better place now, playing with Jesus in heaven. And everyone finds comfort in that story while the child's body is lowered into the ground to decompose, not in heaven, not playing, not anywhere, just gone. But sure, tell me again about God's plan. Tell me what lesson that 6-year-old needed to learn. Tell me how that suffering had purpose. Tell me why an all-powerful God who could have stopped it with a thought chose not to. Sometimes terrible things happen to people who don't deserve it for no reason, with no purpose, with no lesson. And religion is how you avoid facing this, how you make the unbearable seem bearable, how you impose order on chaos. Stop lying to yourself. But facing the truth, accepting the randomness, acknowledging the meaninglessness, that's not nihilism, that's liberation. Because once you stop waiting for God to give your life meaning, you can create meaning yourself. Once you stop following rules written by ancient men, you can develop your own ethics based on empathy and reason. Once you stop hoping for heaven, you can make earth better. Once you stop praying for change, you can become the change. And morality? You don't lose it when you lose religion, you gain it. Because now your morality is yours, not borrowed from a book, not commanded by a god, not enforced by fear of punishment. You're kind because you choose kindness, not because you're afraid of hell. You're honest because you value honesty, not because God is watching. Your morality becomes authentic, becomes real, becomes yours, and that's worth more than any divine commandment. You're still lying to yourself. Let me ask you one more question. What are you afraid of? What scares you so much about letting go of religion, about accepting that no one's in charge? And don't say hell. You stopped really believing in hell years ago. You just won't admit it. You're afraid of your mother's disappointment. You're afraid of Sunday dinners getting awkward. You're afraid of admitting you wasted decades on a lie. You're afraid of being wrong about something you built your entire identity around. You're afraid of what your spouse will say, what your children will think, what your community will do. That's what keeps you in church, not fear of God, but fear of admitting you've been fooled. Fear of losing everything you've built around this lie. Fear of starting over without the script religion gave you. How long are you going to keep lying to yourself? Because that's what you're doing, lying to yourself. Every time you pray to a God who doesn't answer, every time you read a holy book full of contradictions and call it truth, every time you defend beliefs you can't rationally justify, you're lying to yourself because the truth is too hard, because reality is too brutal, because facing existence without the comfort of religion requires more courage than you think you have. But you do have it. You're strong enough to face the truth, smart enough to think for yourself, brave enough to live without the lies. And maybe you're not ready. Maybe the cost is too high. Maybe the fear is too strong. Maybe the community is too important. Maybe you need religion. Maybe it helps you survive the unbearable weight of consciousness. And if that's true, if you genuinely can't function without it, then keep it. I'm not here to rip away your coping mechanism, but at least be honest about what it is. It's not truth, it's comfort. It's not knowledge, it's hope. It's not reality, it's distraction. It's the story you tell yourself so you can survive existence, so you can face death without screaming. And there's no shame in that. Survival is hard enough without having to face the void alone. But if you're watching this, if you've made it this far, if something in these words resonates with the part of you that's been doubting, that's been questioning, then maybe you're ready. Maybe you're ready to stop performing, stop pretending, stop believing what you've been told to believe. Maybe you're ready to face the truth, however brutal, however lonely, however terrifying. Maybe you're ready to let go of the lie and embrace reality, to create your own meaning instead of waiting for God to give it to you. You have two choices right now, in this moment. You can close this video, go back to pretending, go back to church on Sunday, go back to the lie. Keep performing, keep pretending, keep wasting your one life waiting for the next one that isn't coming. Or you can sit with what you just felt, with that uncomfortable recognition, with that voice in your head that's been whispering, "This doesn't make sense," for years. One choice is comfortable, one choice is honest. You can't have both. Because the clock is ticking. Every second you spend clinging to religion is a second you're not spending living authentically, thinking freely, being yourself. Every prayer is time wasted talking to yourself. Every Sunday in church is a Sunday you could have spent doing something that actually matters. You're dying right this second as you process these words, as you feel whatever you're feeling, anger, defensiveness, fear, recognition. You're dying, and religion is how you distract yourself from this fact, how you convince yourself that this isn't all there is. But it is all there is. This life, this moment, this consciousness that you never asked for but got anyway. And you can spend it distracted by religion, by prayers, by fantasies about the afterlife, or you can spend it awake, aware, alive. You can spend it following rules made by ancient men who knew nothing about the universe, or you can create your own values based on empathy and reason. You can spend it hoping for heaven, or you can make earth better. You can spend it as a believer, comfortable and distracted and lying to yourself, or you can spend it as a human being, uncomfortable and aware, and finally, honest. The choice is yours, it's always been yours, and religion is just what's been keeping you from realizing that you have a choice. You don't have to believe, you don't have to pray, you don't have to pretend. You can just be, just exist, just think, just feel, just live, without the weight of divine expectation, without the fear of eternal consequences, without the lie that someone's watching and someone cares. You can be free, truly free, if you're brave enough to let go. But letting go means facing everything religion protected you from: the loneliness of consciousness, the terror of death, the randomness of suffering, the indifference of the universe, the weight of creating your own meaning in a meaningless existence. It means accepting that you're temporary, that you're alone, that no one's coming to save you, that when you die, you're just gone. It means taking responsibility for your own life, your own choices, your own morality, without the excuse of God's will or divine plan or mysterious ways. And that's terrifying, but it's also the truth, and the truth is worth more than any comforting lie, worth more than any religious promise, worth more than any fantasy about the afterlife. The truth is what's real, and reality is the only place where anything actually matters, where your choices have consequences, where your relationships are genuine, where your life is actually yours. Religion is how you hide from reality, how you distract yourself from existence, how you avoid the work of being human. And maybe you need that distraction. Maybe you're not ready to face reality, but don't call it truth. Don't call it knowledge. Don't call it enlightenment. Call it what it is: fear disguised as faith. You're gonna die, and religion won't save you. You're alone, and prayer won't change that. You're temporary, and belief won't make you eternal. The only question is, will you spend your one life living in reality, or will you spend it distracted by religion, waiting for a heaven that isn't coming, following a God that isn't there, wasting the only existence you'll ever have on a lie? The distraction is comfortable, but the truth will set you free if you're brave enough to face it. If this video made you stop, if something here felt heavy or true, that's not nothing. You being here already matters. Every view keeps this space honest, without easy answers. If you want to help more, share this with someone who carries these questions, someone who's been lying awake at 3 in the morning, wondering if the prayers they've been whispering their entire life have ever reached anyone but themselves. Sometimes that goes further than anything else. If this content feels like part of who you are, consider joining as a member. It's not just support, it's belonging. It helps maintain deeper, riskier work. Members get exclusive content and closer access to the process behind these videos. And Super Thanks exists if you ever want to contribute directly. Not an obligation, just a gesture. But if all you do is watch and think, that's enough. That's what matters. This channel doesn't exist for everyone. It exists for those who feel it, for those who can't look away from what's real, even when it's uncomfortable, for those who'd rather face the brutal truth than hide behind beautiful lies. You're not alone in questioning everything you were taught to believe, and maybe that's something. Maybe that's enough.